we're going to get rolling here a little bit. It's 9:06. We're getting a little bit of a late start, but I'm happy to have Don Conklin on this week for our art and science of pricing signs. He's going to share a project or two, and if we do have time, hopefully we can bring some of you others on too to share something that you might have done. I've known Don for quite a while. He and his wife visited our business way back when to see if they wanted to get involved with this, and they did, and they've been very successful over in the Atlanta, Georgia, Beaufort area. Before we get going, Don, I want you to meet some of the people that are here listening in today, in case you have not met these people before. I'll have each one of you guys kind of jump on real quick, share who you are, where you are in your business, how long you've been at it, and that'll give Don an idea what and who's here. So, Miles, let's start with you.
Sure. Hey, Don, my name is Miles Hafner. I'm in Santa Rosa, California, a little bit north of the Bay Area. Been in business for about a year now, which is hard to believe.
I know. Time goes by quickly. Okay, thanks, Miles.
Yep.
Mauricio.
Hey, Don. Well, Don knows me very well. We did the on-site training with him. That was fantastic. Don and his team, they took us for a complete day for training, and we don't have a business space yet, Don, so hopefully soon.
Okay, very good. James, come off of mute. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So I'm in Santa Clara, California, right in the Bay Area. About a year and a half been in business. Seems a lot longer at times.
Like dog years.
I know, exactly. So nice to see you guys.
Okay, good. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And Denise, I see you're here. You're on mute. Here she comes.
I'm here. I'm kind of here, but I'm kind of not. Gordy's not here, so I may be coming and going off of this, but we've been open since 2012, so a little more seasoned, but I'm always ready to learn some new tricks from Mr. Conklin. And we're in Corona, California.
Good. All right. Well, we may have some others that'll jump on a little bit later. That's typically what happens. But Don, I'm going to have you take it away. Give us a little background of who you are, what you are, where you are, and then we can get right into one of your projects to share how you went about landing it and pricing it and getting paid for it.
Oh, how to get paid for it too? You didn't say that when we started this.
That's important. It's a full circle, you know.
It is a full circle. So 13 years in business, actually, this week. Teresa and I opened up. I've been doing it, like I said, 13 years. We're in 12,500 square feet here. We've been doing it, pretty well. We're up to 23 people, I think, last I checked, and 2 dogs, sometimes 3 dogs. It just depends. We do almost everything ourselves in-house now. The only thing we don't do in-house at this point in time would be molded pan faces. Can't do pan faces. You need a lot of equipment to be able to do that. We don't do Gemini letters in-house, but pretty much I would say, and we don't do trade show stuff like what WS Display does. But besides that, we probably do 95% of our business in-house, either through fabrication or through printing. So,
okay. We before you go any further, we just had somebody that jumped on here, an old friend and compadre, John Bogensberger. Hey, John, can you share real quick who you are, what you are, where you are, so everybody else knows who's on the panel today?
John Bogensberger, Spokane, Washington, Science for Success. Known George and Dawn forever, and I just want to step in and hear some of their. Make sure they're not lying to you guys.
Well, and before we get too wild on this thing, remember this particular session is recorded, and if you want to go back and listen to some of the facts and figures and things that you've heard, you can do that. But I just wanted to warn you that this is going to be in the bowels of sign world forever. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to you, Don. Give us an idea of a project of how it came across to you. And even if you were to go back to the beginning, early on, what new owners they struggle with is, how do I price out a project? Where do I begin? So if you can kind of share whatever you've got and how this came about, it'll help them in the steps that they might be able to take too.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay.
So first question is, John, is it 17 or 18 grandkids now?
17.
17. I thought it was close to 20.
Yep.
I'm stopped at 8. We're not going any further than 8. So
That's a bunch. That's a big Thanksgiving. That's all I got to say.
yeah. So a little bit about pricing. Okay. So, and you know what you can charge for a sign is whatever a customer is willing to pay for a sign, right? And it really depends on the kind of sign you're doing, right? I was once told by a very wise gentleman in Escondido, San Diego, that you should price things based upon the value it brings to a customer. The example he gave me was a lobby sign, which is the company's logo. It's a piece of art. You only make it once. And so it's probably worth more than just what the margin would be on that sign. So you got to understand the utility of the sign to the customer as well, right? So a couple of things. I want to talk a little bit before we talk about pricing, about financials, right? Because how you run your financials also determines how you consider your pricing, right? So I only look at 4 numbers in my business. Okay. Number 1 is top line revenue. Number 2 is gross profit. Number 3 is salary expenses. And number 4 is all other expenses. And then obviously the 5th number would be your EBITDA after all that. And so when I talk about margin, I talk about the cost of the product and the cost of the subcontract labor. I do not include the labor of my own employees in that. Okay. And this will be controversial, but I never worry about the cost of labor. Okay. I know a lot of people do. And here's my philosophy on that. Unless you are going to fire someone or lay them off, if you don't have work for them, then your labor cost is sunk. Okay.
Right.
One way or the other, it's your responsibility as an owner to get enough business in the door to keep the people you hired busy. So while it is a key component of what's going on in your business, I don't consider that from a pricing standpoint. I'm trying to hit 70% mixed gross margin on my business. Okay. And I can do that through a number of ways, but it's a combination of what I outsource and what I make in house. And clearly, as I brought some more stuff in house, I can go ahead and increase that margin because I control that margin myself. Right. So, George, I got a couple of pictures that are so I want to talk about Cardinal GC, which is a company that we have down the street. They're a big glass company. You may have some of their glass in a house or a building somewhere. They ship all over the country. They opened up a second building. So we did for them a couple of things. We did for them a stone monument sign for them. We did 2 sets of channel letters for them. We did a bunch of aluminum structural directional signs in their parking lots. And we did other building signs. So how do I share my screen?
Well, down in the corner, you'll see a little button that says share. But before you do that, can you talk a little bit about how this company came to be with you? Was it through the internet? Did you meet them on the golf course? How does this particular relationship begin?
The relationship came off the web originally. So,
okay, so they called your business because they saw your website and they request for quote.
Right. And this was back in 2017. They had the one building back in 2017. And so we did the job for them back in 2017. Okay.
And who called you? Was it the owner's secretary or was it a project manager? Who were you dealing with?
Plant manager.
Okay.
The manager for facilities for that plant.
All right.
Now, you gotta remember
Did he
The
mention?
plant was about 200,000 square feet, so he had
Okay.
operations over all of the operations of the plant.
Okay. And did he mention to you at that time too, that I'm calling different sign companies, or was it just you?
He said he was looking for other quotes. He said, but he wanted to use someone local in Beaufort. And I'm the only one that, hear it all the time. I'm the only one local in Beaufort that would be willing to come out and see him and walk the property with him. And
Okay,
that kind
good.
of stuff. Yeah.
Good. This is important too, because in some cases, people don't even know who they're dealing with. They don't know how many other quotes they're getting, how many other businesses they're dealing with. So that's important to not just put together a quote and send it out, to meet with the customer, talk to them about their project. That's the kind of the background that I'd like to have new owners understand, the steps that you go through.
And so the other thing on the whole project is, we started, the second building was 300,000 square feet. And so I knew that their budget was a little bit over north of six figures. But it was probably not enough for all the signs they wanted. So, we started off with all the proofs and all the pricing for all the signs they asked for. And then when they came back and said, I can't afford that, then we had the negotiation at that point in time. And actually on this project, they wound up installing all the signs that were not electric.
Okay.
So, all the one, so they said, if we install these directional signs and put these signs on the building ourselves, can you shave, a couple of $1,000s off the install price? So it was kind of a back and forth on then, since they were, they're physically a plant. They had people there that had ladders and could do stuff like that, but they couldn't obviously do a bucket truck and install signs. So that was part of negotiations. So to start off, one of the things we try to do, when we look, so we got a couple of parts of this, right? We had two sets of channel letters, electrical front lit channel letters. We had one stone monument sign.
Yep.
Right? We had another aluminum monument sign that we can build. And then we had directional, think of 2x2 square aluminum posts with a aluminum sheen on that was painted for all the directional signs around their property, right? So what we tend to do, and when we're doing pricing and something like that, we need to look at what our costs are, what our costs for, if we're making in-house, what's the cost of the aluminum, what's the cost of the paint, what's the cost of the vinyl, and then we try to get 80% margin on what we do in-house, right? So that's kind of where we do that. So we know what the cost of our aluminum is. We know what all those costs relative to that are. We got them loaded somewhere too, but it's pretty simple, especially if you know that a sheet of aluminum costs $175 or a stick of 2x2 is this much.
Right.
A gallon of paint is this much. You kind of get a sense for what it is, right?
Yeah.
So we got that cost, and from what we had a contract a mason to build the monument sign, and we take that cost and we try to we used to mark it up at 1.75. Now we're marking it up at about 2.4 because we found that based upon reputation, we can do that.
Yeah.
We had an interesting issue on this monument sign, is that the one we built for them across the street from this one back in 2017, what we used the last lot of a stone that was being discontinued.
Oh,
right?
geez.
So it was cheap. It was the last stuff on the block. And so the cost for it was a lot less than having to match it this time.
Right.
So
The new one.
Right. So when they came back and say, why is the cost 75% more than it was the last time?
Yeah.
That was an interesting discussion about prices and how, it was discontinued stone before, Bidenomics is working, cost of materials are going up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So, you roll all that together and you try to get a price for them, right? Your installation costs, we look at, $1,000 a person a day plus a truck, how many days it's going to take you. And we take that number and probably add 50% on top of it because we're able to do it.
Okay, so you just do that because you know in your marketplace that's what will it can handle. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's what we get. The other thing, interesting thing though, is we get a sense of what the market will bear on installation costs
Yeah.
by doing installations for out-of-state sign companies, right? A company that comes in and says, we have a budget of X number of dollars for you to install these 2 sets of channel letters on a Starbucks.
Right.
So we kind of know what the going rate in the market is, as they do as well. So we try to keep within that. And a lot of our customers, and 85% of our business is repeat customers too. So we kind of understand what the market will bear and
Okay,
what those customers will bear.
So even going back to when you started dealing with national accounts, you had no idea really what you could bill or quote for that because you hadn't had that experience yet. So that takes time to build that understanding as well and start develop a standard, if you will. Is that correct?
Standard pricing, correct. And you start with the basics. I mean, you start with coroplast signs and banners, right? $6 a square foot or whatever the cost is relative to that. And so you've got to, and every time you do it, you got to, you build the price list. We got standard price lists for everything from channel letter upright edge to banners, square footage to number of coroplast signs and everything else like that.
So when did you develop that?
Over time, right?
Okay.
As you're selling these signs, you just document, I was able to sell this channel letter sign and it was at this cost and so forth and so on. And you update that on a fairly regular basis. If by the way, if you're selling 100% of the stuff you're quoting, your price is probably too low.
Right. It's time to increase your pricing. That's correct.
So, and then if Steven, my son, was here, he would tell you, then I typically ask Don to increase his prices by 20% because he always prices too low.
That's right.
Because he's very price proud.
Yes.
So,
But by developing these pricing sheets too, this doesn't all have to funnel through you. Now you have other people in your company that can also price things out because this is what we use as our, is that correct?
that can quote that. And that's, clearly we're over $5 million in revenue, right? So I'm not quoting, door vinyl on a car or coroplast signs or banners or anything like that. I'm pricing the bigger stuff, right? So someone else has got to be pricing and putting into the system the smaller stuff. So that's why we have the pricing list from that standpoint. So,
Good.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So can you share your screen? Did you find where that is that you can
Yeah, sure.
see what you got, that you can explain to us what you want to tell us about? Here we go.
Okay. So let's start at the beginning.
All right.
These are the channel letter signs that these are like 50 inches tall, 44 inches tall, right?
That's big set.
Right. And what we do is we always put on the left-hand side a copy of a picture of a sign that we did that's pretty much exactly like it, so the customer understands the contrast and the comparison of one versus the other. Right.
Yeah, and you've got a nighttime vision look there and a day of what their building looks. Okay, that's great.
Right.
Good idea. That's a good sales point.
And this one is a basic directional sign, right? And we try to keep them standard. Like these are 2x2 aluminum posts and a 080 aluminum skin with vinyl on top. It's a pretty basic sign, but this sign's $450 sign. So, you go through that. These signs, by the way, and that sign, they installed themselves. There's these all around the property. Those are the ones that the negotiation I had with them. These go above doors on the building, so they installed these as well. But these again are just aluminum.
All right, 1/8-inch aluminum.
And this is the monument sign that I had to match the one across the street, right? So it's stacked stone. And then the Cardinal GC sign is a aluminum pan with channel letters on top of it. And then the building 2 and Office Depot signs are just plain acrylic with vinyl on top of them.
And one of the things too to point out is when you are doing these layouts and designs, and you have this here, is not only a front view but a side view, so they can see that it's a single-sided sign. The information's there, the details are there, and then of course an example of it on their property. And then in some cases, people actually use like this silhouette of a guy standing next to it, so they can see what it would look like if somebody were to stand there. But that's part of the sales part of the art and science of selling signs. Is you've got to have you could go ahead and explain to a customer all you want about what an apple tastes like, smells like, or feels like, but until you actually put something in their hands, they have no idea what you're talking about. So that's a good detailed layout for your client to understand what you're proposing.
Yeah, and the other part is if we go out and see a new customer, we have, all sorts of samples around our building that we've built, like channel letters and things like that, that we can bring out and kind of show them the differences of
Right.
what we do, if we know what we have. This is another set of, there's a pretty heavy owner looking at a building that doesn't exist. So they superimposed the channel letters on a blank building. I was actually up there taking pictures.
It looks like a football player to me.
I don't know. It depends.
A
Yeah,
lineman.
he probably plays for the Pac-12. Oh wait, they don't exist anymore, do they?
No, they do not. Now,
And then the last one is a smaller monument sign, which is basically an aluminum cabinet with acrylic letters on top of it, right? So you
Yep.
can see the whole complex, whole different set of signs. Total value about $100,000 on this, and that was pretty much at their budget. And we got down to the 100,000 by doing a little bit of horse trading on the installation and things like that.
okay. All right. Does anyone that's online right now have any questions for Don about this project? That because I think that the first thing I would ask is, okay, so let's take that monument that's the with the masonry work and the cabinets that are mounted to that. How do you step through the pricing of this? Because there's like 3 or 4 different elements to it.
And that's how you got to approach it, George. You take it. Okay, so there is 3 different elements to this, right? There is the the masonry sign itself, right?
Yep.
So that's one. I
Yep.
get that cost from the contractor.
Okay.
Then you got the electrical sign, which is the Cardinal CG up there, right? Because that's
Yep.
a pan with channel letters on it. So you got to price that separately based upon your pricing of electrical signs. And then building 2 and Office Depot are just acrylic panels with standoffs. So
Yep.
you know the cost of doing those. So you got to add all those together. And I guess the last one would be the 1695 or 1595 at the bottom. That's just 1/2-inch PVC letters that are painted.
Okay.
But-
So you take each one of those, and then say the cost of your masonry work was $5,000. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. I don't know what it was, but let's say whatever it was. Now you're going to just go ahead and mark it up.
Yeah, I'll
2
mark. If it was 5,000, I'd probably charge 12,000 for it.
Okay.
I think this one was actually 18,000 or 17,000. I charged 40 for it.
Okay. So, and that confidence level, as you mentioned earlier, comes because of your experience. If you were to do this right out of the gate, you're a year old. How does a new owner actually come about feeling comfortable with this?
Well, when I started it, when it was early on, my markup was between 1.5 and 1.75 because anything was better than nothing at that point in time, right?
Right.
As the old Bob Newhart show was, Larry, Darryl, and Darryl, anything for $1, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
that's kind of what you would do, and then you
Yeah.
kind of get a feel to. And it's also who the customer is, right? On
Mhm.
this one, I knew I wasn't being shopped because I did all the signs across the street and they wanted to mimic them, so they had that level of confidence in me, but they weren't giving me a blank check, right? They're still going to negotiate with me,
Right.
there's other customers that we deal with that, I hate to say price is no object, but really price is no object. They're opening up locations across the country. And they say, okay, we need signs at 123 Main Street in Aiken, South Carolina. Here's the picture of the building. Here's the sign package we want on it. And we go ahead, design the sign package, give them an idea of what the quote is. I mean, they're not even really looking at the price. They want to make sure it's within their budget. And
Right.
away we go, because they're worrying about getting, closing on the property, getting with other GCs. I mean, the last thing they want to worry about is signs, right? They want to
Right.
get signage on the building, but they
Right.
know because we've done it for 60 other locations that we're going to give them the signs they want that fit within the jurisdiction they're in at a reasonable price. And the reasonable price is they know they're paying more than if they went out and shopped it, because we're taking care of everything for them, right?
Yep.
But you can only establish that over time, right? And that price slowly crept up as we were taking on more of the responsibility, right?
Yep.
So it's getting those customers out of those repeat customers, that never ask for price anymore. They just know that, a lot of our bigger customers in the Atlanta market are commercial property managers that manage, office buildings, right? Tenants are changing out all the time. Tenant signs are changing out all the time. Monument sign is changing out all the time. They know how much we charge for that. They just send us the artwork and say, change it from ABC company to XYZ company, and just send us the bill, right?
Did you find that being price proud over time brought you more business?
I would say that I would say it has, because people know that we have a value on it, right? I don't know how many times that people have told me that I'm too high, and I void the estimate because it was too high, and I get a call in 2 weeks saying, the company that I went with, they told me they're going to take 3 months to put the sign in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I said, you should have asked that up front, right? And so I have to
Right.
unvoid the estimate, right? And they do work with me, right? I mean,
Clone it and move on. Yeah.
but we have a guarantee too, George. We put on all of our invoices. The guarantee is, you're going to get what you want, when you want it, at the price we agree to, right? And it's the last one is important, right? Because it's not at the price you want, right? We're not selling mattresses here, right? It's
Right.
at the price we agree to. And
Right.
a lot of them understand the price they agree to is probably a little bit more than if they went out and went to, the jackleg sign company down the street, who's can't even start making the sign until they get a deposit from the customer.
Right, correct. And something else too happens as a business owner when you first start out selling your sign company and your pricing things out. You tend to find yourself in a situation where when you look at it, you think, well, as someone, for myself, I certainly wouldn't spend that kind of money for this product or these signs, because I'm always, as a small business, I'm trying to save as much money as I can. So I think that where business for sign businesses, where they make their most money is on the corporate side as opposed to the private side. Meaning that if I'm opening up a Japanese restaurant and I've spent all my money on all the equipment and the seating and whatever else, the last thing I think about is the signs. And so now I'm trying to save money and find the best deal that I can. And I don't want to play that game as a sign company to sell signs where I'm going to give you the best deal because you don't have any money left over. Right. So you have to understand what you're saying too, I think, is that you have to understand who your customer, which you did in this particular case. You have to understand where their budget might be, so you've got something to shoot for. But you have to understand too that at the end of the day, the company you need to make money. You need this. This isn't a nonprofit organization where you just give stuff away because you're nice or kind. And there is some of that happens in the sign business, obviously. But these are things I think as new owners, they need to be able to develop that not a bravado, but this is a value that's more than just buying a sign.
Right. The other part of it, George, I think, is the education, right, to a customer. Because you're right. I mean, people don't understand what the price, I mean, did any of us before we opened up a sign company buy a sign before? Some of us may have, but none of
Yeah.
us have bought a channel letter sign probably
Right,
before or anything
right.
like that. So it's kind of educating the customer as to what goes into it, right? And why it costs the way it costs. It's the whole education process of behind that, you know, it gets to be pretty interesting. I mean, we all probably got the phone call where someone calls up and say, I'm opening up a business, how much for a sign,
Right,
right? You know what my answer always has been? How much for a car?
right. That's
And
a
they
good example.
stop and
Yeah.
they say, what kind of car? And I say, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. No, do you want a radio in it?
I mean, you want a Hyundai or you want a Cadillac? Okay, what do you want?
Yeah, yeah. What kind of a car do you want? Because you're right, there's more to it than that. Okay. Does anyone on the panel have any questions for Don? Come off of mute. There's got to be somebody out there. James,
I
that a
kinda
baby, James. What do you got?
have kind of a general question. We've had similar products like this with the monument, and of course, you have to go through permitting. And one of the statements you made was when you want is one of your promises. But the problem I'm trying to convey to the clients is that sometimes permitting processes take a little bit longer than expected. So how do you convey that to your customers that, look, we're going to do the best we can and get you to sign as quickly as we can, but it's some things that we have no control over?
We actually, we talk about exactly like that, Jane. We say, hey, listen, here's the process, right? You're gonna approve the proof. We're gonna send you a form. You're gonna give us the information to get the permit, right? And we're gonna get a deposit from you. We will start fabrication the day we get the permit, okay? We can't start before we get the permit, okay? It'll take us, and then we quote them 6 weeks after that, and then it'll be installed, right? And then they'll ask, well, how long will a permit take, right? In Atlanta, probably just like probably in Santa Clara, how many little municipalities can actually issue permits, right? And you'll get a feel that some will be able to issue them quicker than
Right.
others. Like our biggest issue is City of Atlanta. You can imagine, I think they have 3 inspectors for a city of Atlanta, which is, you know, over 1 million people. So if it's in Atlanta, we'll say, hey, you know, the permit could take 4 weeks. I mean, as soon as we get the permit, we're going to go ahead and build it. And here's the timeline. But you got to understand that the first thing you need to do is give us all the information we need to submit the permit for you. Once we have that information, we can do something with it. But at the end of the day, it's the government agency that's going to be the one that's going to dictate whether you can get that sign or not.
Right. And there's one other step too that comes into play sometimes, and that's your landlord, who has to approve that artwork as well before you can even submit it to the city. Right. But you will find customers that don't have the patience for any of that, and they start to blame the sign company for it, and you don't have any control over that. You really don't. But time is of the essence, and so when you do go to LA information, you want to get into the city's hands as soon as possible and be able to, in some cases, develop a relationship with the city, with the planner, whoever else that might be there, because sometimes this stuff just sits, and so you've got to kind of poke and prod and keep things moving forward, because for whatever reason, it just a government entity, things just slip and slide. They just do.
Well, that's the only importance they have in life, George. It reminds me of the Pink Floyd song, Another Brick in the Wall, you know, the teachers who, you know, were mean to the kids because they went home and got beat by their psychopathic wives. You know, that's the government employee kind of thing, right? Because, yeah, they take their job seriously. And you're right, you got to establish a relationship with the ones that are closer to you, right? Because, you know, we know a lot. Government employees, when they get a job, they typically keep that job for decades, right?
Right.
So we've been in business for 13 years. We're dealing with the same person for permits in the city of Beaufort that we have for 13 years. They know us. They know that we're going to submit something that's right. You
Right.
know, versus if we did something in Valdosta, which is 4 hours away from Atlanta, they'll probably give it a little bit more scrutiny. And then there was another one, we did one in a little podunk township up by Lake Hartwell, which is on South Carolina border, for a church. And we called up for the permit and they said, "Oh, honey, why don't you just come on up here and just bring a check and we'll get you a permit." And so Misty, you guys may know Misty from my office, she drove up about an hour and a half away, sat in the office for about 15 minutes, signed the check, got a permit. So, but that's
Right
not,
over the
that's
counter.
not usual, but
Yeah, they're all different. Yeah, they are.
yeah.
Does anyone have another question, or do they have a project that they want to bring up for us to take a look at, maybe help price it out for them? No?
You know, if you
Anyone?
want to be $1 million company, you just got to find one project and price it at $1 million. And maybe if they buy it from you, it'd be $1 million company.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
But you have to be careful though, because you can do it, but it might cost you $1.1 million.
Yeah, that is true.
You need to know your numbers. That's what's really, really important here.
It's the cost of the materials, guys. It really is, to understand that cost. And, you know, I mean, you should have Mr. Johnny B teach one of these classes, because he does a significant amount of job costing. You still do job costing, John, I'm assuming.
Not as tight as we used to.
But yeah, I mean, so they're looking at all the costs relative to what goes into what goes out the door, you know, and I was very impressed when I went to visit him up in Spokane.
Yep.
So, you
Well-
know, it's just understanding that you have the money that, you know, to spend, you know, and you're covering the cost of the bill to whatever supplier you're buying your aluminum from or your vinyl from or whatever. So,
Right. And what helps too, and I like to point this out, is that it's a full circle. You don't just stop and say, okay, this is what my cost is, what my markup is, and then be done with it. You want to measure what has happened. You don't need to measure every job. Every once in a while, Don might sit down with his installer and say, hey, here's this project. How long do you think it might take? It'll take me 5 hours, boss. Okay. Well, when they come back, how long did it take? Well, it actually took us 4. Okay, good. Then we're pretty close to what our estimate is. Now I've got an understanding of the next one, because I don't need to pull in other people every time to come up with a cost or get all those details together. You start to understand these numbers, not only from your suppliers and your vendors, but whatever it might take to do a particular job. So if you don't measure that, then you can't manage it. And again, I think it's really, really important just to kind of get an idea where you stand on things, so the next one's easier for you to almost predict, to estimate, because you're going to get customers that are going to ask you, like what Don talked about, you know, how much is a car, right? How much is a sign? Well, I can give you a range. Don right now knows if somebody were to call up and say, I got a set of channel letters that are going to go up, says discount, and they're 18 inches tall, within minutes, he can go ahead and say, okay, that's a $3,500. That's approximately $3,500 until we finally get the details and where it's going to go. It's a raceway, whatever it might be, but he can instantly come up with between $3,500 and $4,000. Now the customer can decide, is this something I want to spend money on, or do I want to draw back and do a non-illuminated sign, because that's going to be less expensive than what my budget was, which was $500 or whatever it might be. So you get to, time is of the essence, and you don't want to spend a lot of time counting screws, you know, when you have an idea of what a rough number should be and where it should end up.
yeah, I would use, unfortunately, a consulting term to make sure that your pricing is directionally correct, right? You know, it's in the ballpark. The other thing I would tell you, as you guys are starting up or in a couple of years in the business, is standardize the materials that you're using, right? What kind of vinyl are you using? If you know what the cost of that vinyl is and that laminate is, then your cost per square foot for every printed sign you make is the same, as opposed to jumping around from, like, determine what kind of wrap material you're going to use. You're going to use Avery, or you're going to use 3M, or you're going to use Oracal. Standardize that, because if you standardize that, then you definitely know the cost for that types of materials, right? Same thing with Coroplast and Dibond and MDO and all those others. Those are the main things that you're going to be selling, that you're going to be making yourself. And if you know the cost of those up front, you know, that a MDO panel costs $75, a 4x8 panel. Or you can get 100 Coroplast 18 by 24 blanks for this price. At least you have that sense, and you're not, you know, I've seen a lot of people that start out in the business, they want to try to get the lowest cost vinyl or the lowest cost this, and they have 3 or 4 different types of vinyl. Well, you're not going to make money by getting the cheaper vinyl. You're going to make money by getting a solid vinyl.
Right.
It might not be the top of the line, you know, but it does the job 99% of the time.
That's good advice. It really is. That's important to understand too. And the other thing happens when you're new and you're just starting out, you're going to find a lot of weird or odd projects that come up. I'm missing a letter, or I need just a panel on a sign base, whatever it might be. And so where do I begin to go through this? And that's that whole learning process that you go through. And there are some jobs that are, Don, do you have any jobs that you avoid today?
Try to avoid ADA signs in existing buildings, because a lot of them are, you know, fancy signs that have different materials that they need one ADA sign, and you have to order an entire 2x4 sheet of material to make that sign.
Right.
So, I mean, I basically give them the go away price. You know,
Yeah.
I'm saying that ADA sign's gonna cost you $525.
Right.
And they'll either faint and say, I'll find someone else, or say yes. And then I've covered the cost because I just bought an entire 2x4 sheet of material to buy that, to build that sign, right?
Yeah.
And so those types you try to stay away from. You know, we try to stay away from wraps. I would tell you 90% of our wraps are to existing clients for fleets that we have. You know, we're not out there shucking for new wraps in new companies, but if they come to us, they come to us. And we absolutely avoid any non-business sign. Someone wants to wrap their personal vehicle or put graphics on their personal vehicle. You know, I got racing stripes for my Mustang. Can you put them on for me?
Right. Right.
No, I can't. So, and here's the other one. You guys will appreciate this. I'm right next to the largest man-made lake in the Southeast. You actually have to drive by my building to get to the lake. I will not do boat names at all, because boat owners are pains in the asses. They want their boat names to look so cool, and then you have to go out to the water while it's on the water and install the boat name. And when they call and ask, can I have a boat name? I say, you know, Sinorama Buford's down the street. You can go ahead and call them.
Yeah.
So
They love doing that work.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Have you had to do any hulls of boats yet that look like anchovies or you know,
I did
any
one.
kind of bait?
I did one that the wrap said "shut up and fish." But
You never know. John Bogensberger, you've been in business quite a while. Can you share with anyone work that you would avoid at this particular time after all these years?
Well, like Don said, wrapping golf carts, boats, motorcycles, snowmobiles, all that crap. No, no, no. I'm still a bit of a sign slut. So to me, to Don's point, I mean, the thing to keep in mind is whether it's $100 job or $100,000 job, there's still a minimum number of touch points that have to happen. I mean, you're going to get interrupted with a phone call, an email, or a web inquiry. You got to respond to that, and then you have to deal with the customer, and then you have to go to design, and then you have to go back to the customer, and then you have to go through the sign off on the proofs, and then it has to go to production. They have to figure out what the hell you guys are talking about, and then they get it all done, and then they call the customer. It's ready for pickup. Customer calls, another interruption to check what your hours are, and then so there's like 10 different interruptions that happen on the simplest little orders.
Right.
And that's part of your overhead that you got to cover. So that's why the little projects have to have the huge margin, and the bigger projects you can get a little skinnier on. One comment I was going to make, when you're doing your pricing on the front end, dealing with the customer, is finding out how they take care of their vendors. So is it a government entity? Is it a school or university? Is it a smaller general contractor? Who am I dealing with, and how do they pay their vendors? Some of them are going to be, yeah, I'll pay you a deposit, but then we're net 60, or I'll work off of an invoice depending on who it is. I mean, a PO depending on who it is.
Right.
But if I'm working off of a PO and not a deposit, how are you paying me? Well, we're net 60. Holy crap, I'm the bank on this one. Okay. I gotta add that extra money into, because I'm either getting interest on it at the bank or I'm getting interest on it from the customer. I don't care. I want the job. And then the other thing, and then they want to pay with credit cards. So if it's a $10,000 job, they're paying it with a credit card. Your 2.5, 3 points on that comes into play. And so that's just a good front end question. How do you take care of your vendors?
How you take care of your customers. Now, Don, is there something that you do today that you didn't do earlier on? And that's to look at your pricing, you come up with your number and then add a few extra points because you might get a credit card, or that there might be, as John just brought up, a delay in payment, and you're carrying costs, or use any of the other advice that we received early on with see Jack Warner, add another 3 or 4% for your vacations that you're taking around the world.
No, I mean, I always go, I'm very price proud to cover stuff like that, right? So that when something comes up that we have to redo, it's not, oh my God, I got to redo this. It's like, it's just part of the normal business. If you're doing 250, 300 orders a month, something's going to go wrong.
Sure.
Not everything is going to be perfect. And if you have enough margin built into the other jobs, redoing this or redoing that's not going to be a huge deal for you, right? I always check the margins at the end of the month to see everything comes out all right.
Right.
The other thing I would tell you is that I try to not itemize things as much as possible, right? Some of you may and some of you may not charge a credit card processing fee, but I tell you what, if you put that on the bill, it's another point of contention for the customer.
Yes,
right?
we hear that quite often.
Right. So I make sure that I don't do that, but I make sure that I make up for it in the cost that I obviously charge the customer.
Yeah, you already have
So-
that in there. That's good advice. Anybody else? Have any other questions? Hi, Craig. I see you're on right now. Craig and I were working on a project for him just recently too, and I hope he's making some progress with that. Craig, do you have any questions? I don't know how long you've been on the call. It might be just towards the end of it here, but do you have any projects or anything like that you want us to take a look at for you, or have any? No, nothing. Okay. Well, unless there's something else you want to add, Don.
Yeah, what I want to, one concept that we started out early in the business that we always keep up with is, I think everybody understands that in a retail business, one of the key metrics to cash flow and profitability is inventory turns, right? Everybody's heard the phrase inventory terms.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have no inventory, right? Because everything we make is special, right?
Right.
But to me, our inventory turn is how quickly you can get it from customer contact through design, production, installation, payment, and back to the top of the cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the quicker you can turn that cycle, the quicker you can get cash running through your business. And the quicker you can run that cycle, the more stuff you can throw into that tornado as it goes. And quite frankly, it's big rocks and little rocks, right? Because, 5-yard signs can be put into the system while they're doing other larger jobs as well as part of the overall process. So
Right.
always keep an eye on what your turn time is, because that'll also be a competitive advantage to you. The quicker you can turn it, the more business you'll win because your competitors can't turn it that quick.
Right. That's a very good point. And it's the velocity of the business as you're moving forward, because if it takes you 3 or 4 weeks to get something through your shop, that's how much longer it's going to take to get money in. So that's a very, very good point. Keep that cycle going. And do you measure too? We talk about measure all kinds of things, but do you measure on a daily basis how many orders that you have coming in, or is it on a weekly basis? What besides the metrics you mentioned earlier? What are you looking at on a daily basis, if anything at all? I mean,
Yeah, on Corebridge or any other report is how much volume you've written in orders, completed in orders, and collected in cash. Those are the three numbers I look at daily, and then we track on a weekly and monthly basis. And by the way, if you have a dog in a sign company, you should name him appropriately. His name is Banner, right? So, I also have one named Chanel. Coro
Oh.
didn't work out for me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it is, you know, and Jeff Miller taught me this a long time ago, is if you keep an eye on orders, the volume of orders written, volume of orders completed, and cash collected. Orders written is your future indicator. Orders completed is your current indicator. Cash collected is a lagging indicator of your business.
Right. Right. Keep that pipeline full. Keep that whip up and moving. All right. Well, anyone else? Anything? If not, I'll let you all get back to work. Don, thank you so much. Appreciate your contribution today. You know, pricing is science and selling is art. And I think that some of the tools that you've shared with us today are going to really help, you know, our business in more ways than not. So continued success to you and your company and how well you're doing out there. And again, if you want to go back and review this, it has been recorded. You can go back and look at this and other sessions that we've done in the past. Each owner has similar approaches to how they go about not only getting customers, but pricing signs and following up and everything else that's involved with running a sign company and making sure everybody that and everything they do in their business is a profit center, because that's what this is all about. Profitable business that you can sell in the future. Right?
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Y'all have a great rest of the day.
Okay. Thank you so much. Take
Thanks,
care.
Don. Thanks, George.
You bet. We'll talk again soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.